Because we've got a very difficult site with a lot of obstruction from trees that obscures our visibility, we are required to do a traverse. What this means is we'll have multiple tunnel station setups all across our site to be able to measure the full DTM of this site. Finished measuring the DTM of the site. We had multiple traverse setups, and it means we can now take this data back to the office. We have done all our checks and we can see that the traverse will have a good result. Welcome to the total station theory. In today's theory, we will discuss more about a traverse and what is important to keep in mind when you are doing a traverse. We have named 4 critical parts of doing a traverse in the list below, which we'll dive into more depth on each individual section. So the first one is, how do you know when a traverse is required? Number 2 is identify the next setup positions. Number 3, different types of traverse methods. And then number 4, set up on a point or do a resection. So let's jump into number 1 first on how do you know when a traverse is required. You will be required to do a traverse when you can't measure or place the points you need to on your site, when there's no visibility or low visibility, which can introduce error, when you have to work further than your first orientation. So when you've got a building, for example, a building has got 4 corners. Say you set up on corner 1 and now you have measured your first corner and you want to try and measure the other 2 corners as well. Well, that might give you an inaccurate reading, or if you're measuring reflectorless, you might miss the physical corner point completely. So the best is to rather start with the traverse around the building and get all the detail which is required from you in doing your survey correctly. Okay, and that brings us to point number 2. Identifying your next setup positions. Well, there's again 4 points to consider, but there's many more, but let's look at them. Look at the best points where you want to place the control. So what this means is you want to identify points or locations on your site where you know there will be little to no obstruction in the future, or the points will stay there over a long period of time and it won't be disturbed. That's typically the way you want to look at your setup and your control points which you place on a site. Number 2 is the points you place must give you the ability to set up on it or do a resection. So it's very important to make sure that you can actually set up a total station on top of the points which you place. Why is this important? Well, if you messed up or you missed some data in a certain section, you can always just return to that specific point or position and just remeasure whatever data you have missed, which is required of you, or place some more points on that specific position if it's a setup job. So it's important to place your points in such a way which you can revisit your site and be able to work from the previous data that you have placed. Number 3 is points must be there to revisit the location if needed, and we've explained that now, why it's important. And then number 4, place points that can stay there and avoid redoing the work. So if you miss data, it's important to make sure that the points you've placed will allow you to revisit your site and redo a certain section of the work, or if you just want to add some data, or now your project has moved on to a set out job from a DTM, the points you are placing must give you that ability. So always keep that in mind when you place your control points or your station points going forward. Okay, so let's go over to the different types of traverse methods. So we've listed 3 main traverse methods over here, but it's important to know what type of traverse is required for the work you are going to do. For example, when you are doing a road or a railway, you would typically do a straight traverse. When you want to go around a building, imagine there's a building inside here, you would use a loop traverse, which is also your most dangerous type of traverse. So it's important to build in security measures when you're doing a loop traverse to make sure that you avoid any scalar errors that might occur when you're doing a loop traverse. So typically what you'll do to avoid that is when you shoot out the second setup position, you'll first go to that point and look back to the first orientation point where you started your orientation from and make sure that you can still see that point. What this will allow you is when you do a setup on the second setup position, you can suddenly get more control points further, and which will allow you to get a better orientation on your third and fourth and so on setup. So it just helps you to eliminate any scale error that you might introduce in your loop traverse. And then you've got your real-time unadjusted traverse. So this one is also most common for engineers, not necessarily for land surveyors, but engineers use this a lot on construction sites. So yeah, you'll have to look at your need of your site and then determine what type of traverse you will use, and always know the errors that might occur for that specific traverse and try to eliminate them by using different working methods. Okay, let's go over to the next point. Set up on a point or do a resection. Again, we've got 2 points, so let's quickly just run through them. Point 1 is we must always remember that we want to set up on a point. So when we place that specific point, we need to consider that that point must be clear, not close to any obstructions such as walls, and it must be in an open area. Why do we say that? When you place a point and you later want to come and set up on that specific point, and it's not in an open area, it's in a cramped space, what can happen is you might bump your turtle station when you move around your turtle station because the area is too tight and too small. Or you might not even be able to set up on that point because you have set it up too close to an obstruction such as a wall. Or for example, if you place a point on top of a wall, you can't go with your turtle station and set up on that specific point. So in actual fact, it's not a usable point or position. The second point is you want to actually place points which you can use as much as possible in your traverse. So when you place your points, look how far you can place them where you can get the maximum amount of detail from that specific point. And that's it for today's theory. See you in the next video.